The Golden State Warriors just absolutely exposed the entire NBA, and they've made themselves out to be the team to beat in the 2024-25 NBA season. Because the way that this team is looking right now, oh man, is it looking lethal. I honestly think that they could make an extremely deep playoff push, and if they get some better role players around the main guys, they can do even better. But who are those main guys that I'm going to be talking about in this video, and what are those supporting pieces and young players who just make this team 10 times better? Additionally, there's a ton of chemistry with this roster that just makes it unbelievable how good their chances of winning the 2025 NBA championship is. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down everything. So, you know what? Let's just get right into it. First things first, let's talk about the Warriors' big three, or I guess now they are a big two, with Clay's, he's kind of uncertain if he'll be on the roster this year or not, but we'll get back to that later in this video. Currently, the big two, and by big two, I really mean the big one, is Steph and Draymond. Because obviously Steph and Draymond, they are going to be that dynamic duo, because you know that they have that chemistry, that they're going to get the ball to each other's hands and they're going to get good looks. Last season, Steph averaged 26, 5, and 5, which is, I mean, those are really good numbers. And Draymond, even though he was suspended and missed a lot of time this season, he averaged 8, 7, 6, and 2 stocks per game. Hey, those are good numbers. Additionally, Draymond's assist to turnover ratio was the second highest on the entire team, following, Chris Paul, obviously, the point guard. But they just mesh really well together, and we know that they will and always will. Those screens that they set for each other, that they run around, and Steph has the lung capacity of a friggin' blue whale, so you already know that those two guys are going to get you buckets every single night. But if we look further down this list, you have some of the young guys, like Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Pajemski, Moses Moody, Trace Jackson Davis. You can even throw in Lester Quinones, Gui Santos. You have a ton of players on this extremely deep team, and they all show up pretty big every night. Kuminga this season averaged 16, 5, and 2, but I would actually say that those numbers are misleading, and he averaged more like 20 points per game, because he averaged those 16 points per game in only 46 out of 74 games started. That means that 28 games of the season, more towards the start of the season when Steve Kerr didn't really know how good he was, and before he got that buzz cut, we all know the infamous buzz cut, he wasn't that good. He only averaged 12 points per game, but ever since being taken off the bench, he averaged 23 points per game, which is an insane leap for a guy who is just an insanely good player. 16, 5, and 2 is obviously nothing to joke about, and his defense was also great this season. When you have someone like Jonathan Kuminga with that great big wingspan, he's extremely tall, he can jump extremely high, you know that he's going to get blocks, he's going to get steals, and he's just going to cause overall mayhem on defense. He's just going to cause havoc. It's hard to verse him, and if you see him on defensive matchups, it's either going to be him or Draymond on the other team's best player. And you know what? Usually it's him, because of his versatility and his lateral quickness. Because while Draymond is an amazing player, he doesn't really have that speed anymore as he's aging, which is tough to say, but we've got to accept the truth sometime. Meanwhile, Kuminga is 21 years old. He's at the ripe start of his NBA career. He became the youngest player to ever win an NBA championship 2 years ago, and he seems to want to replicate that. It looks good on Kuminga, Steph, and Draymond's side at the very least, but if we look further, Brandon Pajemski is the next name that I'd like to highlight, because this season, as a rookie, he averaged 9, 6, and 4. Those are okay numbers, but we must remember that he's a rookie. he only played 26 minutes per game and averaged that. That means that per 36, he averaged around 13 points per game and more than 10 rebounds, which as a guard is absolutely nuts. I would compare him to a Tyrese Halliburton with a bit less basketball IQ. And obviously, basketball IQ is something that comes through the years. So this guy, Pajemski, he's going to be good consistently. He's going to be good for a very, very long time. And that's exactly what you want on this Warriors roster as they're gearing up towards potentially a retirement home for Steph and Draymond, or potentially going for another NBA championship for these next 2 years. Because when the Steph Draymond run is over, I mean, I don't know the direction of this Warriors team. It's honestly a bit scary, but at least for next season, while you still have Steph and Draymond, this team is going to be incredibly good. They've always been incredibly good with those two main guys, except for the few seasons that either one of them has been injured. Throwback to that 2021 season, by the way, where Draymond got injured and Steph was out for about half the entire season. But when Steph was in, especially in April 2021, he averaged 40 points per game, showing how competent of a player he still was, and frankly still is. Because while some people may undervalue Steph, he can still be the leader of a championship team. Averaging 26 points per game is no joke. And on top of that, he just draws the defense's attention in such a way that they have to guard him. Finally, if we go down the list of players again, we can find Moses Moody, who averaged 8, 3, and 1. While those numbers may not look the best, he wasn't played basically at all, only averaging 16 minutes per game. And he could be a very valid trade piece for this offseason. Finally, the last guy I would like to talk about is Lester Quinones. And most of you probably haven't even heard of him. Unless you're a diehard Warriors fan, you definitely haven't. Because he only averaged 4, 2, and 1 this NBA season. However, these numbers are extremely misleading because, and just hear me out before you just get mad and say, no, those numbers are correct. No, they're not. He only played 10 minutes per game. If you adjust that to per 36, he's an absolute demon. Per 36, he's averaging 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Okay, maybe that's not an absolute demon, but we all know that his numbers would be better if he was playing with the main guys and not the scrubs at the end of every game. What I'm trying to say is that this Warriors team, they have some young players who are going to progress very, very great in the next, coming months, coming years. They have Steph, who obviously he's going to be the leader of a championship team for however long he stays in the NBA, and cherry on the cake, you have Steve Kerr, who's been a competent coach for a very long time. If you enjoyed, like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.